tethered
Yes.
to the microphone so it doesn't get stolen.
Yeah, that'll pick up anything.
Are we ready?
It's worse.
Edge of the table.
I'm sorry, Dan.
But it won't pick up.
That's. She just needs another instructor.
So anytime anyone speaks, they have to come up.
All right. Good evening. It is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June the 13th, and this is the regular meeting of the Millwood City Council for June 2023. At this time, I'd like to do the roll call. Christina, if you would begin.
Mayor Freeman,
Present?
Councilmember Besey,
Excused.
Councilmember Kohler,
Present.
Councilmember Van Hees,
Here.
Councilmember Sander,
Present.
Councilmember Stravens.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum this evening of the council members. And at this time, Mr. Stravens, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, do I have any amendments or changes to tonight's meeting agenda from anyone from the council?
I make a motion to add, say, item 3A. We have a report from Mike Kester.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? So we are making a motion to allow Mike Kessler of Spokane Valley Fire District to speak to the council as part of the agenda, basically a presentation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Do I have a motion on the amended agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Tonight's amended agenda is approved. Thank you very much. Do we have any public comments received by mail, email, or directly to the council for any items on, any action items this evening?
We did have one for the public hearing on the transportation plan, and that was put at everyone's seat.
So you do have a comment on the 6-year transportation plan for the public hearing. Let the record reflect that Greg Mott has submitted a comment via email. Thank you very much. So that takes care of item 4 and item 3. All right, so now that's going to be item 4A/B. So, Mr. Kessler, would you please approach the podium? Thank you very much.
City Council. Last month, I had the opportunity to go back to Washington, D.C. to attend the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial. And while I was there, I set up an appointment to meet with, I think it's on. Okay. Meet with the director of FEMA's fire division, Dr. Lori Moore Merrill. And anyway, so I ended up at Department of Homeland Security and met with her. And the two issues I brought up with her was, well, number one, the rail crossing situation that we have right here in Millwood. I explained to her the situation and how that if we were to have a derailment or something here and that the fire department cannot get to the other side to attend to an emergency or something of that sort. So she had no clue that this kind of thing was going on here. And so I kind of pointed out to her that we have 61 trains a day that go through the city of Millwood and Spokane Valley here between Union Pacific and the Burlington Northern. And my idea was to start a pilot program here in Spokane where the city of Spokane Valley's fire department would train with the Burlington Northern down here in their yard to teach the fire department how to separate trains and do it safely and within the limits and boundaries of the FRA, which is the Federal Railroad Administration. So I talked to her and we worked on maybe something, putting together a pilot program that'll initiate training the fire department here in the city to be able to do that. And the second part of it is that we need access to the manifest that's on the trains. A very good example was right here in Millwood just last month with the fire. We didn't know that those two compounds, separate, they're benign, they're not hazardous. Combine the two, you've got a problem. We have that happen so many times on trains. You'll have two tank cars that'll have, separate, they're benign. You combine them and you've got a real problem. We need to know that. We need to know what to do with it, how to fight it, and how to take care of it. So that was the two issues I brought up with Dr. Lori Moore-Merrill at FEMA. She was very interested in this and was going to look into this. And you might, I'm not sure, but you might be hearing something from Dr. Moore-Merrill on this very situation here, because I showed her the film of what went on and how this very thing can happen right here. I mean, we're a prime example. This is an accident waiting to happen. It really is. And with my experience with the railroad for 22 years as a conductor, I know this. I've hauled every bit of hazardous material you can think of through here, and then some you don't even want to think of. Anyway, that's all I have. If there's any questions and comments, I'd like to hear them. So,
Questions for Mr. Kessler? Mr. Stravens?
So is there an evacuation plan for Millwood? If there was a derailment, do we have a plan in place?
not as far as I know, other than the emergency system that comes out and, that comes out on your cell phone, evacuate certain areas. We don't have a set plan as far as I know, as far as actually coming in and doing. It's just FEMA, I know, does not have anything like this because they were clueless as to what I was even talking about.
So that seems like something we should have, right?
I would think it's something we probably ought to look into. I haven't heard of anything, an evacuation plan for Millwood, but I think it'd be a great idea to have one.
I think there was discussion previously, a couple years ago, or a few years ago before COVID really kicked off and kind of pushed everything around with respect to Spokane emergency management, county emergency management, developing some plans for, it all fed back to the bulk oil trains on the BN and the limited number we had here. But I don't know where that is now. I can check into that. We are part of that coordinating group for Spokane Regional Emergency Management, and I can reach out, and we have some communication or quarterly communications that go on. Paul was much more in charge of that as the Public Works Director at that time, and I think did you guys go to a
I did talk
couple?
with Paul about that. Yeah, we had talked before this COVID thing came on. Paul and I had met on this very subject, and then, as you said, COVID hit and everything got flushed, so.
Yeah, so I think folks are getting back to, so the last emergency evacuation plan update was done in 2014. So that might be something to take back to emergency management and see what's going on. But to your question, no, we do not have a Millwood specific plan. A lot of it depends on, as Mr. Kessler would say, what is in the cars at the time. It's the biggest one that rolls through here is that anhydrous ammonia, and that I know we.
3 of the people I hired out with no longer work for the railroad for that very reason. They got their lungs burned from that anhydrous ammonia.
And if a car like that, if we had some type of derailment, would it be stay in place or would it be?
Oh, no, it would disperse.
Oh, so it would be evacuation?
Oh,
Yeah,
I mean, as far as evacuation, absolutely.
In terms of homes?
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
we would evacuate the whole city.
It'd be like chlorine gas. You want to get as far away and as fast as you can.
Okay.
Because the wind will take this and it's not good stuff.
I would think that'd be something we should.
Get on your route.
But you gotta remember one thing here too in Millwood.
Yeah, you said something.
If the Burlington Northern Santa Fe were to derail out here, where's our prevailing wind come? It comes from the southwest. It's gonna blow right in Millwood.
Right.
Keep that in mind. That's another thing you have to think about, even though properly it isn't in Millwood. So, a lot to think about.
And currently notification would be cell phone? Is that?
Yeah, if
911
you're-
callbacks, so landlines, anything like that, the 911 callback
And
system
it would be
reaches everybody.
I mean, you'd hear about it. I'm sure there'd be bells and whistles and everybody, the neighbors will all hear about it, but you don't. That's something you don't wanna fool around with. Run and ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else have questions?
Any other questions? Mr. Sander?
Just thank you for bringing those items to the attention.
No, it's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time.
So at this time, that brings us to item number 5, which is an executive session, which we do have an executive session this evening. What I would ask is, because of the limited number of personnel that we have for an executive session, that we as council members excuse ourselves to the back offices as opposed to asking everybody else to disperse. And so, Mr. Worst, the executive session relates to?
Yes, the city council convened to executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110 subsection 1I, Roman numeral 2 and 3, to discuss potential litigation and or legal risks or financial risk of a proposed action of the city. The council will be asked to take action upon conclusion of the executive session. Will convene for 15 minutes unless otherwise extended.
So at this time, it would be our 4 council members, myself, Mr. Worst, and Ms. Jansen. Will
minute.
Okay, good.
We got one more minute?
Already started.
So now if we,
Okay, so we're coming out at 6:30?
6:29.
6:29, okay.
That's what yours says.
Ready? Or you just let things run? Okay. It is 6:29 and we have returned from executive session. No action was taken during the executive session. However, there will be an action item coming later in the meeting. So at this time, this brings us to item 6, which is our action items for tonight. First action item is our consent agenda consisting of the city council draft minutes for the April regular meeting, April 2023 regular meeting, the city council draft minutes for the May 2023 regular meeting, the May 2023 claims, payroll, and treasurer report, and then resolution 2023-04 disposition of surplus property. Would anyone from the council like to take any of those items on the consent agenda separately? Not seeing any, do I have a motion on tonight's consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the consent agenda is approved unanimously. This brings us to item 6B, which is our resolution 2023-06, the 6-year transportation improvement plan and the corresponding public meeting. Members of the public wishing to testify at the provided at the public hearing may do so in person by providing written testimony. Those wishing to testify must have signed in prior to the start of the meeting, or by any of the other avenues, such as by U.S. mail, electronic mail, or directly submitted to City Hall. So, who has got the presentation for the 6-year tip?
This is basically just kind of a recap from what we went over last month. We just changed a couple of things that were down lower on the list. Mainly the grind and overlay up from the intersection of Trent down to Frederick to try and get more of the Argonne project done all in one season instead of, dragging out the torture through 2 or 3 seasons. I think that if we can kind of collaborate with all the different funding and get them all to play nice together, we should be able to get the whole thing done in one swoop. So that's why I have those top things on there for hopefully next year, depending on what goes on with the main Argonne project.
Are there any questions for Kyle, Mr. Shiwi, on the tip as presented, on the 6-year tip as presented? Mr. Sander?
These are the, getting a bigger picture here, the major projects, but as was noted in our letter we received, was about the sidewalk, right around the intersection there of Grace and Argonne. That probably could be incorporated, at least a bit of that, right? I mean, that's.
I did not see that comment. Can somebody read it to me or something?
Yeah. It was concerned about the walkability of Grace east of Argonne.
Alex says over the, let's see. If the crosswalks at the trail, Euclid, Empire, and Liberty are greatly improved, as being discussed, the crosswalks at Grace should be planned for similar improvements sometime in the years following. Grace Avenue to the east of Argonne provides a severe challenge to pedestrian safety. I've watched parents with small children attempting to walk this block around parked cars at the same time that moving vehicles are turning from Argonne. There's no place to walk except in the street. The angle of this block in relation to Argonne adds to the visibility challenge of traffic entering this block. A sidewalk on the south side of the street for this one block would help solve this issue. The 2007 traffic study mentions continuing sidewalks into the neighborhood.
I think, Dan, I think that's not something that we could do as part of the Argonne improvements, just because I don't think we've considered the acquisition of right-of-way. I don't think we know anything there. We're gonna have to look at stormwater improvements. It would be a separate engineering study. If next year we wanna add that to the tip, we can look at that as an addition to next year's 6-year tip. But that's probably gonna be a different beast than pouring some sidewalks down there. I'm not really sure which side of Grace you would put that on, because I think we're pretty close to fully built out.
I think looking at the scout and stuff, the right of way through there is really goofy as far as the way the road curves versus where the property lines and everything are.
Yeah, it would take a full engineering study and a separate pot of funding to look at that. It's not been included in the road surfaces upgrade, so if we wanna add it for the next tip go round, we can certainly take that into consideration and look at that and look at extending sidewalks to the east, if
I
that's
would
something we wanna
certainly
do.
think that'd be worthwhile, at least to get around that corner. And I guess I'm not sure what we're doing, where we are here at Frederick went on the corner also.
There's gonna be changes
Yeah.
with that, because there's gonna be changes for the road approach and things like that as it gets swapped out.
Okay, thank you. I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, in the meetings leading up to tonight, there's been a lot of talk about traffic calming on Empire. It's been a point of contention for a long time. So is there any way we could move that to next year?
So with it being on the list, if we have funding, where it is on the list, if we have an opportunity to do something, we can move it up. We can't do a project, we can't search for projects for funding if they're not on the list.
Right.
If there comes an opportunity where we're able to find funding, we can do that. We can always, as a city, self-fund a project.
Right.
Where it's not on the tip. If it's not on the tip, we can't go after state or federal, county, state or federal funding. So we do have that. I can say that we have asked Welch-Comer once again to look at more dramatic forms of traffic calming on Empire. If you would remember, last time we went through the whole idea of chicanes. We looked at traffic circles, and not roundabouts, but actual traffic circles. That was not an approved or desired option. We looked at chicanes. That was not a desired or welcomed option. So what we've looked at recently is the potential for speed humps,
Like Missoula has.
like many other places have, with actual designed rakes and signalizing within MUTC some additional intersections there, making four-way stops with tableized intersections that are truly tableized intersections.
Okay.
Now, Welch is looking at that, and Welch is, as part of that, to provide some conceptual costs for us. Because we do know that is something that has been there, but it's one of those where, if we go ahead with any engineered traffic calming, once they go in, they're not coming
Yeah,
out.
they're there to stay.
And the issue being that I would remind you as the council that if it is effective, you will have other individuals in the city coming asking for their traffic calming.
Yeah,
So that is,
just wondering.
yes, no, that is, but if it's on there, we can pursue funding from other sources. There is nothing that limits us from doing it ourselves if that is a chosen option.
Nothing but funding.
Nothing but funding. Mr. Strauss,
I'm the newbie here, so what's a chicane? I wasn't here for.
chicanes are where they pinch their chokers. The chicane is, and sometimes you offset the road, sometimes you have chokers. It's this meandering path that makes people slow down, changes, constricts the lane, which causes a visual impairment to slow down. We were trying to tie that in with extending, with providing stormwater collection and extending, bike paths on both sides. So that was the idea of making the lanes narrower, installing bike paths, putting these chicanes or chokers in at various areas. That had the, consequence of requiring either the city to look at additional actual potentially purchase of right-of-way, because we would have to do stormwater abatement as part of those types of construction. So anything, we'd have to have swales, anything like that, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So with no other questions, at this time, I will open the public hearing on the 6-year transportation improvement plan. We have received one written public comment regarding the 6-year tip from Mr. Mott, as we discussed earlier. Do we have anybody signed up?
I have 3 folks signed up, but it's not indicated what they're speaking to.
So I will ask, because this is not the public remarks sign-in sheet, this is not for public remarks, this is directly for the tip. I will ask individuals first if they wish to provide comment on the 6-year tip. Mr. Beasy, do you wish to provide comment on the 6-year tip?
Yes, please.
Please come to the podium and just state your name for the record.
I'm Todd Beasley. I am asking the mayor and everyone who's on the council and that's employed by the city of Millwood, on behalf of myself and others that I've listened to, that Argonne remain 4 lanes, 2 northbound, 2 southbound lanes with smart traffic lights for those wishing to turn left. Upgrade high visibility pedestrian and bicycle crossings. Doing these things will help keep the ambience of the historic Millwood as a historic friendly pedestrian area for people and bicycles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beasy. So then we have Alan Heidemay, comment on the 6-year tip.
I declined my comment.
But do you want me to call you for public remarks? Maybe? We'll see. Shireen Yan, comments on the 6-year tip.
Good evening, Shireen Young at 8903 East Liberty. So I had a question about sidewalks. I know we've discussed it, there was a study done or something about some of our sidewalks that had raised areas. Is that something that would go on to the tip at some point? This would,
So initially, if you see unfunded in 2025, the Dalton side.
The Dalton one?
That was where we had started initially with the sidewalk improvement plan. Kyle, do you want to just for a brief statement?
We are trying to get that done this season, actually.
Oh, okay. So not on the tip, you can still just get done then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, we were investigating a larger job, which would have been a lot of repouring, but then all the ADA approaches and everything on all the intersections. It was a huge ordeal.
Yeah.
So I found a quicker, cheaper solution to kind of Band-Aid it for the following however many years,
Okay.
just to kind of get us by. So we're gonna do some horizontal cutting of the ledges that are over there to eliminate the trip hazards
Okay.
and slope them to basically an ADA compliant slope.
Oh,
And that'll, I mean, depending on the growth of the trees and the roots, and because that's the main problem, depending on the growth of that stuff, I mean, it could give us a couple of years, it could give us another 10 years.
Yeah.
But, and before we get to the point where we can actually fund a huge project of like repouring sidewalks and
right.
doing different things to try to get the sidewalks away from the trees too, so we don't have this problem again in 10 or 20 years.
Probably part of the tree plan too. And then a second question was about the Empire, the traffic calming the bike lane. So the bike lane piece of that, it was mentioning widen Empire, and so there would have to be something purchased, or how would that be working? Widening Empire for bike lane on the east side
So I believe that amount of right-of-way exists just to extend asphalt. As part of the chicane design, that would have required more right-of-way because we would have had to encroach farther out into the area. Just adding a little bit more asphalt is different than having where we'd actually have to construct barriers, route stormwater, develop 208 swales, things like that. So I think that is still in there, as you see in 2025, widen Empire for the bike lane heading east, which is just whatever that south side of Empire would need to be extended. Is it south side or north side?
south side.
South side of Empire would need to be extended to accommodate a bike lane.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and then, great, that's what I needed to know. And also, I would echo Todd BC's comments in regards to the ambiance of the historic area, so thank you very much.
Thank you. So that concludes our signed-up public comments. I would ask, does anyone else in the audience like to provide a public testimony or comments or hearing on the 6-year transportation improvement plan? Second call, third and final call. Seeing no one else desire to provide comments on the tip, I will close the public hearing at 6:44 p.m. And with that, would look to the council for their desire for action on resolution 2023-06.
I move approval of resolution 2023-06 for the 6-year transportation improvement plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, resolution 2023-06, our 2023 tip is approved unanimously. Thank you. So that brings us to item resolution 2305, amending the Small Works public roster process. Mr. Wurst.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. In 2020, the city adopted Resolution 10-09, which established a Small Works public roster process for the city. It's run through the Municipal Research Services Center of Washington. That provides for I guess I'll say in theory, but often in practice, a more expedited basis to engage in public works procurement under certain dollar thresholds. At the time we adopted the resolution, it was under the Small Works roster dollar thresholds were $300,000 or less. Probably, gosh, kind of what, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, somewhere around there. Yeah, the legislature amended that to the level of $350,000. And we've not updated it since then. The city's still operated under a $300,000 or less threshold. But looking at some projects for this year for the city, Public Works and the engineers have identified it might be nice to get to that $350,000 threshold just to expedite the bidding process. The limited Public Works process, which allows for an even more expedited procurement process to direct solicit basically, has been raised to $50,000. So we've amended that in the statute here, or in the resolution as well. What you will see is apparently the city's city attorney back in 2010 was looking for some employment security and decided to draft flat numbers into the resolution, thinking those would never be changed. The current city attorney, who is the same as 2010, has decided just to set those limits as authorized by law. So we shouldn't have to come back to you in the future to reset those dollar amounts. The other amendment to the resolution is to give the mayor the opportunity, the purchasing authority up to the limited public works $50,000 threshold as opposed to needing to wait for the monthly meeting to come back to the council. So that's gonna raise that mayor's expenditure authority on up to $50,000 from what was a $5,000 limit before. I don't know what you're buying, on a public works basis for $5,000.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of work that can be done, that's public works in that $50,000 threshold. The need is oftentimes that price may not be good for 20 days, 30 days, waiting for the council meeting. And oftentimes we've identified it, a contractor's available, and so they've got a pocket of window they can do it, and so we'd like to be able to just procure it and do it. Those expenditures also would still be, within the council's ultimate budgeted authorities, for the mayor's expenditures. We're not going to be exceeding those, and if we do, then those come back as an amendment to the council in the future. Happy to answer any questions. Kyle, did we kind of cover everything on that?
I think so, yeah. I'd just like to say that I think that the sidewalk trip hazard project that Shereen was talking about, it probably would already be done this year if we could spend a little bit more money without going through all of the BS.
So, what we're saying is no pressure on this vote.
Very little, very little.
But, no, happy to answer any questions. And I will say this is consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing. They're staying within the statutory thresholds. I would say your expenditure authority in Millwood's probably on the lower end for a mayor. But we also don't have a lot of big expenditures that, really require that to exceed the limited public works threshold.
I'll just say one last thing. I would just say that it doesn't often come up, but there are often projects where, particularly on the water side of things, anytime we're doing telemetry, anytime we need a pump, anytime we need a booster, the electrical soft starts are just getting ridiculous. And I think there were a couple times that we got lucky because we had a meeting just as it was the last one in the United States. I would say if council does not want to grant that, which is always council's options, one of the things we may have to consider is moving toward more meetings. Even, go from a monthly meeting to bi-monthly meetings or semi-monthly meetings, whichever one it is. But it just, the trouble is now is that, as Brian was saying, when things come up, it's usually, hey, there's one, or there's two, and we've got 5 guys wanting it. So you get what you get. That's kind of the nimbleness now. If it was 30 or 40 years ago and they had 100 of them laying around, it might not matter. Yeah. Mr. Stramons.
So, Mr. Wurst, in terms of how it actually works with the mayor, so the mayor would make the approval and then it would come at the next meeting for city council to ratify? Is that correct?
No, you would be allowing the mayor or designee to accept telephone bids or quotes at a cost of $50,000 or less. Well, yes, excuse me. It would come back eventually. It would come back to the next meeting for ratification by the council. Yes.
Okay. What would,
The ratification, but the expenditure's already been made.
right, and so that's my question. So city council ratifies it, what if city council doesn't ratify it? What's the effect?
Well, you have an unauthorized expenditure that would be consistent with your policy, but not authorized by the council. So,
We need to rework that section.
well, I'm not sure how you're gonna rework it. Because the purpose of that is to allow for that expenditure to be made. The ratification, I would say, is more of a notice to you of the expenditure that's been made, consistent with the policy. If you prefer not to ratify, but to have it presented as means of notice, we could certainly change it to that.
That makes more sense to me. Because the council actually won't be ratifying, it would be providing notice to city council. But I'd seek other council persons' input into this, but
Statute, to make sure. let me look at the RCW to confirm that
Okay.
the statute itself doesn't provide for ratification.
So Kelly, where are you?
So I'm looking under section 6, and it is the second to last section, which says, provided that the city council shall ratify the mayor's approval at the next regular meeting of the city council by means of the consent agenda. And so my issue is ratification generally means, well, we're approving it. However, if it's already been completed, which I actually, so let the record reflect, I'm in favor of section 6, the mayor's, I think that makes sense with 50,000. The public probably looks at 50,000 and says that that's a big number, but in terms of construction, it's certainly not. And I'm sure Public Works can tell you that in today's inflationary society, 50,000 goes pretty quick. But it concerns me that it's saying city council shall ratify,
That's the word.
in the future.
Yeah. I just searched, it's 3904-155. Ratify is not the term that's used as required by statute. Honestly, notice isn't even required. So if you want to just remove the ratification or notice requirement, we could certainly do that.
I like a notice, I would prefer a notice requirement, but I'll defer to other council persons. But I would say that ratification is not the proper term.
I agree with Kelly. Let's take ratify out and just change that sentence to read provide notice on the consent agenda, be fine.
So just to be clear, we'd be notified anyway in the treasurer's report of the expenditure. So it's still there.
Okay, so what I would propose is paragraph 6 of that resolution would be revised as follows. Title, award. The mayor or his designee shall present all telephone bids or quotations and recommendations for award of the contract to the lowest responsible bidder to the city council. However, for public works projects estimated to cost $50,000 or less, the mayor shall have the authority to award public works contracts without approval of the city council, provided that the mayor shall notify the city council of such contract at the next regular meeting. For public works projects estimated to cost greater than $50,000, the city council shall award all public works contracts.
I'm satisfied with that language.
Okay. So that resolution would be what is, I guess I'd ask for a motion to amend the presented resolution as just stated.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as stated.
I'll second.
Question, are we approving the change or are we approving the entire resolution? What's the
Approving
change?
the amendment to the resolution.
So 2 steps here.
Yes, so we have a motion and a second to amend for an amendment to the resolution. Is there any discussion of the amendment? Seeing or hearing no discussion of the amendment, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, is there a motion regarding the amended resolution?
I make a motion to approve the amended resolution.
Is,
2023-5, amending the Public Works roster.
is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor of the amended resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, resolution 2023-05 as amended is approved. Thank you. All right, that takes care of that.
We just worked in a little Robert's rules, didn't we?
There we go. Go in and come back out. So that brings us to item 6D. Establish a date for a public hearing regarding the appeal of an administrative decision. MFP 01-2023. Ms. Jansen.
As you're all aware from some previous meetings, we did have an application for a manufactured home park that was submitted over on Empire on the east side of the city. We did receive a number of appeals of that decision, and our code states that an appeal of an administrative decision goes before the city council. It goes on to say that the hearing shall be scheduled within 60 days of the date that the appeal was filed. In our case, that was May 10th. So I am asking this evening for you all to set a date prior to July 9th for a public hearing on the appeal of the manufactured home park project.
So, Mr. Worst, do you have anything you would like to talk to the council about regarding procedure for the hearing prior to us setting a date?
Well, we should, the code doesn't identify the minimum amount of notice, but I think in this case, we should try to give at least a reasonable 7 to 10 days notice, 7 days minimum, 10 days, if that's available. All standard rules apply as before now, knowing that there is appeal, and we exercised caution previously, knowing that there could be an appeal, but now with an appeal, the council sits in a quasi-judicial position. So, ex parte communications, any of those things that could otherwise influence your decision that are off the record, and that would be an on-record review with public comment at the hearing provided, would greatly encourage you to avoid those things that could influence the appearance of fairness. The city code doesn't lay out a real clear method in terms of how it doesn't lay out an express method as how a public hearing needs to be conducted. It just needs to be conducted in accordance with due process. So that's notice and opportunity to be heard. So the notice would be the publication of the hearing date. The opportunity to be heard is typically done with, we open the hearing, there's a staff presentation of the application, the factors, the applicant's given an opportunity to present, the public is given an opportunity. In order to manage the public hearing, those comments are typically limited to no more than 3 minutes. We have adopted rules of public hearings in the past at the city that would be applicable, which means, interruption of the meetings is prohibited. Groups that have the same or similar comment are encouraged to consolidate their comments into a spokesperson. Typically, those groups can be given a little bit more than 3 minutes for a spokesperson, as opposed to 20 people using their 3 minutes separately. But we have all of those rules. We can provide you a copy of those rules for public hearing. They're on our website as well, but those would be applicable under resolution adopted by the city council. The city council's decision needs to be in writing because it could be something that could be appealed. There's statutory processes that way. So we need to be in a position where the council would be able to adopt findings and a conclusion. For those of you that have spent some time on the planning commission, this is routinely done with the planning commission. They're presented two, sometimes more options in terms of how to adopt or approve something that comes before them, and we'll begin drafting that and creating options for you to consider. But that, the decision of the council would need to be what's finalized before July 9th in writing, not just simply thumbs up or thumbs down and we'll approve it at a future meeting. It would be to comply with the code, we need to have the written decision issued by July 9th by the council. As always, this council typically operates on a fairly unanimous basis, but this is a simple majority vote of those present, of the council members present. So happy to answer any questions. Go ahead.
Mr. Worth, so typically we wouldn't do a written decision, that would be a separate meeting, correct? We'd have
It's
a
up to you.
public hearing, and then we'd have a written decision presented to us?
It's entirely up to you. I think what Christina and I would like to do is have a template written decision, either yes, it's a yes or no answer on affirming or not affirming.
Okay.
We'd like to have that before the council and options that you can use, select language based on the vote of the council. And we, depending on when the hearing is, we'd like to have that ready for you at the hearing if you wanted to issue that the night of. The way the calendar works out, we're not in a position, broke that pin. We're not in a position to wait to adopt the written findings at the next regular council meeting. So that's what we just want to make sure that we're taking the steps necessary so you can act in accordance with the timelines.
Very good.
So you will be provided all the information in either hard copy or electronic copy for your consideration to act as the hearing body. And so I guess at this time,
And to clarify, all the information is the record. It's
It
the
is, yeah.
application, it's the information that was submitted, it's copies of the appeals. That is the information that the city made its decision on. That's the information that you would base your appeal on, as well as any public comment at the hearing.
so as Brian said, our next regular meeting is the 11th. The decision has to be out no later than the 10th. I would ask the council, I know within that first week in July, or that first full week of July is probably gonna be something where a lot of folks are going to be holidaying, et cetera, et cetera. I would ask that the council look, beginning the week of June 26th for a special meeting, where the purpose of this special meeting would be the public hearing and only the public hearing.
To further that, I would propose June 27th, 6 p.m.
You're saying the 27th?
27th, Tuesday, 2 weeks out.
Works for me.
We should have staff report, we should have information, time to process,
Does that work?
notice to public.
Yeah, I think I can make it work.
Okay.
We have another date for a decision.
We could call a special meeting before the regular meeting to finalize and
We could finalize,
same night, yes.
yeah, that same night.
And that special meeting, the follow-up special meeting can be I think we still have remote access, do we not, for attendance? So, if you're traveling or if you're unavailable later in that week or whenever it is, as long as we open the meeting in this room, if the council members are unable to attend that follow-up meeting on a written decision, but can communicate and reach a decision on the written, the written order, then we could do that remotely for you as well.
But we still have to have a majority of council members available for the following meeting
That is correct.
to
Yep,
issue a written decision.
so
27th works for me.
All right.
at 6.
So we will set a special meeting for the hearing of the appeal of administrative decision regarding MFP 01 2023 for June 27th, Tuesday, at 6 p.m. here in this chamber.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you. All right, so that takes care of that. And that concludes our action items for our agenda action items for this evening. Discussion items. What? Oh, okay. Discussion items, the update for the city logo. An update on the city logo process, not updating the city logo, but an update on the city logo. Who's taking that? It's not me.
Sean?
I did not make it to the Millwood Business Community Meeting on I think it was June 8th that I wanted to get to. So I was wondering if anybody else had feedback. I would solicit more feedback in the next month or so and come back to this. Unless you guys have heard other things.
I went to the meeting, there was no discussion of the logo. So it's kind of one of those things where, do you guys want to talk, does the council wish to discuss more regarding updating of the city logo? Do you want it as an action item? Do you want to try and solicit more feedback? The time is not of the essence regarding this.
I think we could take, so my opinion is, obviously, we heard lots of citizens, they like this logo. I was kind of late to the party, and so I think that was my first meeting. So is it difficult to digitize this logo? Is that part of the issue?
No, it just needs to be done. There's a few things that we need a little bit of alternate designs for buttons and things like that. We would not have to radically revamp it, but we would need to make some changes to it so it flows better in typeface and is more compartmentalizable.
So what I heard citizens say is they like this logo. Let's modify it slightly. Let's make it unique to Millwood, but keep this basic format. I personally, I don't have a problem with our logo. What was presented, and I appreciate all the hard work that went into it by staff and Sean and the consultant. I was somewhat underwhelmed. And so in light of that, I would like a version of this. And so maybe a different tree, but I like the tree. I like the river. But I'm fine if we want to table this and talk about it
I say we table it.
in 2 months.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
The only thing I will suggest, and I think it might have been discussed at one point, is seeing the similarities between all the other logos out there in some way, shape, or form. We have not done a trademark search. We don't know if we're encroaching on somebody's original logo or not. It may matter, it may not matter. I'm not that guy. I'm not a trademark attorney. So I just would say that that may be something to consider. If we decide we want to keep this, we may wish to look at something like that before we did any tweaks, just to see if we did have to tweak it, could we tweak it enough to avoid any sort of trademark infringement on anything like that.
And I would think we've had this logo for how long?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
If somebody's got it marked and we haven't looked,
Okay. So let's table it.
I mean,
Let's look at
we
that.
got somebody that understands it.
I did not go.
Oh, yeah,
dig-
we have an expert.
I did not go digging into it, but it's possible somebody may have. a
I will
registered
trademark
mark.
it and sell it to you.
Okay. So my suggestion for whatever it's worth is we keep the basic format, we change it enough to, and then do we need to copyright it? Is
You
that
can trademark it as a,
Yeah.
trademark
you
it?
can mark it.
Yeah, if it can be marked, we would take that step and do so.
So more along to Kevin's point, we should have a search done to see who's out there who has a registered mark or using a similar mark, and this might be just common law use, could possibly stop us. And then see if we need to tweak it and how much to tweak it to get around that, so that we can trademark it and we own it.
And I would be fine, maybe if we, and I don't know if we've exhausted our consultant's funds, but if we took our logo and then we did variations off of it, and so, just here's a minor variation, and then here's a little bit more, and that could be a solution, but I think we can table it for September.
Yeah.
I would suggest that if it appears that the consensus of the council is that the logo designs did not adequately reflect what we were looking at. We'd like to keep this logo, but perhaps there is, if we're going to live and die by this logo, then we need to take the proper steps to ensure that we can, and it is ours. So what I would suggest is perhaps at the next meeting, time permitting, we would come back to the council with an idea of what it would take to do a search. And then we could do that search. We could see if there's anything out there that is similar enough that it would cause us to have to take action. And then if we needed to do tweaks, we would consider it at that point and not send the consultant or any other consultant off and running to do tweaks without knowing what we were gonna do. But if the intent is to continue to live and utilize this type of logo, then we can come back, staff can come back to council with an idea of what it would take to do a search in order to understand if we would have any sorts of infringements or if anybody could cause us for infringement.
I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah, so at the next meeting, we'll make a motion to do a search, trademark search.
We'll come back with some information at the next meeting, go from there and see if it can be ours. We will take what steps we need to preserve it.
And thanks for the hard work on this. Appreciate it with staff and with Sean.
Oh, no, it's, you do it so you know
part
you
of the
don't wanna do it.
process.
But it's always a good thing because, never would have thought that it was I didn't realize there were so many that look just like it. So, always a good one. All right, so that is the update on the city logo with some actions back to the council, and then update on the community mural project. Christina?
So you remember that at our special meeting, we had students here from West Valley Art Department proposing a mural for our downtown area. We had four that you all were presented. So I just want to talk real briefly about some work that's been going on since your special meeting. Kyle more than I, have been looking into how to have the mural produced, what kind of materials, the longevity of those. If you have questions about that, I think at this point, we're talking about having Kyle talk about what it will be produced as, and he can jump in here in a minute. We also have been taking a look at our sign code and where we were proposing to put it. And staff is feeling that maybe we would be in a better position if we look to place the mural somewhere on property that the city owns rather than on private property. And so we've been kicking around some ideas. Right now, what we're talking about would be some sort of aluminum panel, I think, placed somewhere along maybe the trail. So with that, if you're interested in the construction of it and what Kyle has learned about that, he can certainly speak to that. But I wanted to show you the four designs again and see if you all had a strong feeling one way or the other on which mural you would like to go forward with. This would just be the first. I don't know with the other murals that are proposed here, if we could maybe find other uses for them somehow. And we've also talked with West Valley School District about possibly making this mural competition something that's done maybe every 3 or 4 years with their students to produce more public art around the city. So with that, I will just click through these proposals and then you all can discuss. So this is option number 1. So those were the four designs that were presented to you. I obviously can't. The students told you in their presentation the materials they used and how they came up with their designs. I do need to work with the school once a design is selected to get an artist release and start working towards production of it. So at this time, I guess I would like to know if I can answer any questions for you, if you like one more than the others or feel one's more appropriate. If you want to know more about how we're planning to produce it, Kyle could talk about that.
Mr. Stravens.
Christina, what's a scale? How big are we talking?
I think it's just depend on your area you wanna put it at. They are developing it on, I believe it was, 4x12 sheets of aluminum. So like all our stop signs, for instance, it's all, I don't know what it is, if it's 16th inch or like 8th inch aluminum, it'd basically be printed on that. And so, and it'd be in big sheets. When we were originally thinking about the lodge wall or whatever, it was gonna be however many of those sheets to make the size you guys wanted for the space allowed.
They do come with graffiti coating. And Kyle said that they said the lifespan is 10 years or more.
Yeah, the longevity, I was surprised. I told him, full southern exposure. And I was honestly surprised at how long they were saying. There was two different types of film, I guess, that they were gonna use. One of them, I believe, I wanna say, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think the first one was like 5 to 10 years. And sometimes longer than that. And then the second film, which was a little bit more money, not huge, was 15 plus. So I was kind of surprised that they'd get, that kind of,
Right.
before there's any kind of fading and distortion.
And what's the cost? Basic cost?
We didn't really dive too deep into that. We were just kind of, because we didn't know what size or anything to go off of really.
So we do have, as Christina kind of alluded to, the lodge is looking at undertaking a major restoration and internal remodeling of that site they're building there with intents on bringing it to a high standard. There was discussion from the lodge as to using their space for other purposes, potentially, and by space I mean their wall space, their exterior wall space for other purposes, for more commercial purposes. So there was an allusion also that there would need to be a negotiated fee potentially, things like that. In looking at some of the, in some of our current sign codes, it may not meet our sign codes to do a large installment up there, et cetera. So one of the things we started to talk about in looking at the idea of more of a rotatable art type of installation was, as Christina said, identifying areas along the trail that may be acceptable to installing these types of art installations, keeping the cost compatible, reasonable, and doing more with less surface space, where we were able to have a multitude of artists as opposed to a one long investment that we are unsure right now as to what the terms of that relationship would be with the lodge in utilization of their exterior wall space. I fully, if you have seen or have been privy to any of the potential redesigns for what they're talking about in the lodge, it's fantastic. It just looks fantastic. They want to do the downstairs, they want to do the upstairs, they want to do the whole thing. It's a considerable investment for that group. And I can fully understand that they would want to look at whatever commercial or monetary options they might have for commercialization of their space. So to that, I'm not necessarily sure for the city if in the long term, it would be something where we were able to maintain that for a long duration, as long as what we would pay for, we'd have to potentially sign a short-term agreement with the lodge. Let's say they find somebody better, hungrier, deeper pockets. Now we take that down. Now we have this massive mural that we can't really find a home for anywhere. So it might be, it would be good, as Christina said, for the council to give some feedback on if there are any of these ones that the council is more in favor of than others. But I think for what we're doing for production, we may want to take a step back and look at some alternative areas of display or some alternative formats for display that would be, we could do more, as I said, we could do more for a more reasonable cost that we could then control. Because I think if we're going to use this as a public art installation, it should be for the public and it should be on the terms of the public. Mr. Stearns.
I agree completely. So what if we put some in the park? It seems like it'd be a nice entrance to the park. That seems like that'd be neat, and maybe we should choose, more than one, just a couple of them. The park's big enough, we haven't implemented our park plan yet, so if we did like one at one end of the park and the other end of the park, that could be interesting. For my personal taste, I like number 2 and number 3, but that's just me. But I like what the mayor's saying, if we could change it out, if it could be a collaboration with West Valley High School, I think that's interesting. And it adds interest to the park. I'm not opposed to the trail though, as well, and so.
Get some suction cups and stick it to the water tower.
That's a very good idea, Mr.
Thank you so much.
So Kyle, can you repaint these on an annual basis? Like, or do you have to just buy new aluminum?
I don't think I could do justice to their artwork by me personally repainting.
Well, I mean, whoever's painting them.
So it's actually like a film
Screen
that's put on,
print.
yes, it's not airbrushed or painted or anything like some of the, I know, like, I think the pawn shop up here has an actual mural painted on the side of the building, it's cool as heck, but this is actually printed on, kind of vaguely similar to the stop signs and all that. It's actually, I mean, you go into their Stripe, right, you go into their little showroom thing, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's just like a regular digital picture you took on your high quality camera, and it's as big as that wall, I think Stravens probably has a decent idea doing it possibly in the park, because I think you could actually put it on a smaller scale. It would be cheaper. I mean, 1 4 or 5 by 12 foot, I mean, that's one sign right there. Instead of having like the side of that building where you'd have multiples of those all chained together or whatever. And we were thinking of having them on like a permanent framework, whether it be on a wall, or if we had to do, if in the park, it'd have to be on our wall or on some posts or whatever came up. I think the framework could be stationary, and then you would just remove the panels and you could put different panels on the same framework.
Mr. Senator.
Could we, the trail, we have a lease on the trail. I mean, we don't own the trail.
We have a forever lease on the trail.
And does that go all the way to Vista, or where's the school?
Yes, goes all the way to Vista.
So, and we could do something like, for example, at Vista, on the fence, same as Kyle was talking about, a smaller one, welcome to there, because we don't have any other place unless we do it right here. But then it kind of comes to a traffic issue, I think, a little bit.
I think if you were,
Can't do anything on a state highway.
I think if we were looking at it, as Kyle was saying, it might be something where we look at a type of installation where it's post and bracket, or if we did have structures that we could mount to. I'm not sure necessarily that the fence would be the most appropriate place to mount, but make a more permanent frame
Down there somewhere.
down there or in various areas. We have a few areas that we could look at with the park benches or things like that. we're not really causing any sort of sightline interference along the north side of the trail with the railroad. We can always, as long as we keep it in a certain area and don't encroach into the sight lines of traffic, it would be easy to put things on the north side along the trail in the area of the park, something like that, but we could put things there, and I don't think that's really gonna cause anybody any great concern. But as Kyle was saying, the nice thing would be ultimately is if we wanted to make these initial types of investments for frames and brackets, then you could have,
Switch them out.
you could switch them out. You could have biennial art competition and rotate things out. You could do a lot of different things. If you wanted to open it up to other individuals as opposed to just West Valley, you could do that sort of thing. If you're looking for something kind of like ways to capitalize on the trail, that would be a good way to do it.
Suction cups.
Can we talk about which one y'all like?
I like this one.
Which one is that? That's number 2,
I
correct?
don't know, mine is number 93.
That was number 2.
Number 2 in the order. Number 2 is
I
quite
kinda
nice.
like that, except I didn't like the train, so I like number 1.
Yeah, but it's kind of Mr. Rogers-esque with that train, I like the trolley.
I like number 3.
Oh, you guys are making this really difficult.
And I like 2 and 3.
Well, if Kyle can find multiple spots, we can put up more
We
than.
got a
Yeah,
two.
and I'm not opposed to 1 either.
Oh,
I
come
think
on.
they're all very good. Here's my apology. I think they're all very good, gentlemen.
I kinda
No.
like 4.
I like number 2, but number 3 is really calling my
Yeah,
name.
so,
It's kind of a,
yeah, the only,
in a historical neighborhood, we could put one of these.
well, yeah, I mean, and I'm not opposed to doing 4 if we did, kept it in scale and did 3 by 6 or something, right?
Maybe we should figure out how much these are gonna cost, a
Well,
size.
and I think that's a good point, so.
If it's a 3 by 5 or a 4 by 6 or whatever things they are, I mean, that would be
Yeah, I mean, that'll give me at least a size to kind of
Yeah.
base some pricing off of, because I mean, up there, we were thinking, 10 by 20 or something, I mean, it could have been huge, so, no, that's good.
All right, so we will come back at the next meeting with some more information,
Thank you.
and you all will come back with your first choice.
Thank you.
We like all 4.
What if we all have a different one?
That can has been kicked so far, I don't even see it.
Suction cups was introduced.
Let the record show suction cups.
Strike that from the.
Yeah, they're cheap and they fall down, you lick them.
All right, so that brings us to items number 8. Item number 8 are reports, no action for these. Our first report is our public facilities report, Mr. Shiwi.
On the Public Works home front, we had some barbecues in the park that were deteriorating to the point where your charcoal will be rusting and falling through onto the ground. So we updated the 3 small charcoal barbecuers that are out there. And I have 2 larger ones on order, one to replace the one at this first gazebo, and we're gonna actually add one to the second gazebo for the barbecues. I've been interviewing people for the temp positions for pool lifeguard and park. As of just yesterday, actually, we have 2 people locked down for the lifeguard position and 1 part-time park person. The pool is set to open right now. It's set to open on Tuesday, the 20th. If you guys went to the farmer's market, you probably noticed we started taking down some of the old chain link fence between the tennis courts heading east, between the trail and the park. There was a lot of want for extending some of the stuff for the farmer's market, including like food trucks and heavier vehicles than just your normal cars and trucks that we let navigate the park. We didn't want those heavier trucks and stuff going through the grass and breaking sprinkler heads and stuff, so we're routing them through on the trail between Gerber and our shop and having them kind of parallel along where that existing fence line was, so they can be right on the border of the farmer's market, so people can get to them and still be in the farmer's market area.
That worked out nice, I thought.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue it on down towards the water tower as we have time. And it's gonna just kind of open up and then I think it looks great. It kind of incorporates the trail into the park and makes one bigger, larger area. It could open us up for, stuff in the future. Maybe there's been talk of car shows coming back and different things, if we can kind of keep them off the grass and on more of a hardscape type surface. The first farmer's market was on the 31st. I think they had a pretty good fire up for the season, so we should have a good season of farmer's markets ahead of us. I had a division of Aero Construction out repairing the cracks and repainting and sealing all the areas that were needing attention on the tennis courts and the basketball courts. So hopefully those will hold up for a while longer. And I attended a TIB class in Medical Lake with Melissa, one of our traffic engineers from Welshcomer, just on acquiring TIB funding and what they look for when you start talking about streets and complete streets and all that kind of stuff. So that's about the extent of my activities for last month.
Questions for Mr. Shiwi? Thank you very much, Kyle. Next, we have our utilities report from Mr. Earl.
Okay, all the water samples came back satisfactory this month. We switched from from Butler to Old Park. Bigger well, people use more water. We had all our backflow devices tested. I had a meeting with the engineers about a couple upcoming water line projects, getting them going. Evergreen Rural Water came out. We've had a leak in the park for several years now, trying to pinpoint where that was at. And then we also had American Leak Detection come out too. It sounds like we're gonna put a couple valves, shut-off valves in there to diagnose where it's at. So hopefully we can get that fixed this year. Idaho Fence came out this week to fence off New Park and the new generator. So that will be getting going. And then putting a new fence up at Butler. And then Bigfoot, they're gonna be installing our new flow meter at Booster. That's been out for a while. And then hooking up the electrical and telemetry to the generator. So we'll have backup power for New Park. And then in sewer, everything's going well. We've been busy doing a lot of locates for MPL, replacing the old gas mains for Vista.
Any questions for Mr. Earl? Thank you, Matt. Brings us to our treasurer's report, Ms. Mackin.
The annual report was filed on time and attached in your packet, if anybody wants to look at it. I began work actually today on the budget amendment that we'll have for you at the next meeting, so everybody's getting their numbers together, making sure their funding is good. Finally, WCIA has rescheduled some of those classes that I need to take to keep in compliance with our compact. And they will be out in July to do our audit and walkthrough. So that's a good thing. And then, as Mr. Shiwi said, we have hired some new temps, and so I'm getting paperwork done and, all the necessary compliance for background checks and so forth, since they're working with the kiddos. So, other than that, I don't have anything. If you guys have questions for me.
Questions for Ms. Mackin? Would you remind me and council when we start the budget planning process? No.
Oh, when we're going
Yeah,
to, we'll do it
when.
right after the amendment, we'll roll into that.
So
August.
the amendment will be in July?
Mm-hmm.
So that will be a quorum plus one, correct? So when we are at the special meeting, we will be looking to ensure that we have 4 individuals at the meeting on the 11th for that budget amendment. If you do have any budget items, i.e. Anything that you want to bring forward as council members, it would be a good time to bring that at the next meeting so we can incorporate those into the planning process. So anything's street studies, sidewalks,
Yeah, I'll send out a call.
suction cups.
Extra large section.
Hey, I can get you little Philip
Like
plunges.
Garfield, he's all stuck to the corner.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Our clerk, planning, and code enforcement reports from Ms. Jansen.
From the clerk's office, we also have hired a summer temporary employee who is going through all of the boxes of the address files that had previously been scanned. And she's auditing all of those to make sure that nothing was missed before we send those paper files for destruction. So she's been making good progress with that. And then some changes have occurred over the last couple of weeks with the plans for our boards and commissions in the farmers market. And so Planning Commission and Historic Preservation will not be conducting their summer meetings in the park. But Denise and I will be in the farmers market with just a general city booth that's providing information about all of those boards and commissions. The first time we will be there will be next week on Wednesday, the 21st. So if you're at the farmers market next week, stop by and say hi. From planning, we have our first movie in the park scheduled for next Friday, the 23rd. We're showing Back to the Future. The Pacific Northwest DeLorean Club will be there with a DeLorean for people to look at and take pictures with. And then we've also got a couple of snack trucks coming with kettle corn and shave ice. So if you want to come out and watch the movie with us, we'd love to see you there. Typically our June movie doesn't start till 8:30 or so, just due to how dark it is. So also in planning, I have authorized 5 of the trail signs to go into production. So I haven't spoken with you about those recently, but our Historic Preservation Commission worked for quite a while putting together information for wayfinding signs or along the trail. The pedestals are already out there. So 5 of those have gone into production and you should see those installed fairly soon, I would think. And then also I have been working on a subdivision of the park property to separate off the water tower and new park well. Those facilities need to have phone landline access, and without a separate address, that was difficult. So we processed a short plat to divide up the park into those different parcels for addressing, and that I believe was recorded last week by our engineers.
Yeah, we could never get data to Old Park or New Park or the shop actually independently because we did not have, the address of the park was the fire station. So we have, we've segregated the fire station off, it kept the actual address, but we've assigned addresses through short platting to all the facilities. So if I do think one of the things we are going to consider is getting data out to Old Park so we can have a better handle on telemetry and things like that out there. So, but that was done.
And then lastly, from code enforcement, we've had a few cases crop up over the past few weeks, but we're getting good compliance. We will be sending out some information on code enforcement to our commercial and industrial areas, just as a little bit of education in the coming weeks. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions? So from the realm of code enforcement, just to bring folks up to date, we have had some issues with folks camping in RVs in commercial areas. We need to remind our C1 and C2 zones and our industrial zone, just because it's not residential, of the fact that no RV camping is allowed within those zones. So we'll be getting that information out to individuals, just as a friendly reminder. We do have one code enforcement action that we need to take. I don't know if you want to do that in the legal report or just bleed into it now.
Do it now if you like.
We do have a code enforcement action regarding Hildebrand Auto that we need to look at. Mr. Worst, would you like to go into that?
Operating at 10423 East Trent Avenue. The city was informed by another agency that Hildebrand Auto Service and Repair has been operating without a city business license. We're not sure for how long. For full disclosure, the city has had code enforcement issues with that address in the past. The city sent not a formal notice of violation, but a out of compliance letter, hoping to coax them back into compliance on dated April 17th. There was no follow-up to that correspondence, no communication whatsoever, despite it being delivered. So then the city thereafter filed up with a notice of violation under Chapter 814 of the city code, the code enforcement process. Again, no contact. With regards to that code violation, the city was contacted, I believe, either yesterday or today with regards to potential other uses, business uses of the property. So there's at least an acknowledgement, both visually driving by as well as a desire by the property owner to conduct some business there in the future. Authorization of litigation was within the authority of the city council. Again, I always remind the council, we try with kids gloves, and then we try with encouragement, and then it all else fails, we have to resort to litigation and code enforcement action. So at this point, the staff would ask authorization to commence code enforcement litigation against the occupants or owners of the property at 10423 East Trent Avenue.
So just to elaborate on Mr. Wurst, the business is currently licensed, or the business is currently used as is listed as an auto repair facility. It does not have a state business license. It does not have a city business license. Its other uses that have been attempted are as a concert venue, as they wanted to have food services there. They wanted to transfer a liquor license there so they could serve beer and wine. Those uses are not compatible with the business as it is utilized or as it is intended. They also have issues. Spokane Regional Health District, Environmental Public Health has looked at potential abatement there. They have contacted Washington State Department of Ecology for improper storage of spent fuel, spent oils, greases. There are a number of tires there that they are keeping on premise. We've attempted to work with them. We've attempted to give them plenty of time to do other things, and at this point, they are not responding to either ourselves, to Spokane Regional Health District, or to Department of Ecology. They still have a request out there for a liquor license, apparently. So, and then as Mr. Wurst said, they did have a request made to Spokane Regional Clean Air Agency for a potential paving project in order to provide hard surface for a entertainment venue. So I would ask that the council approve Mr. Wurst's request to begin litigation for code enforcement at the property address.
I'll make a motion to commence legal action against said business.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion from the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Wurst?
No, just a question. I'd be curious to find out how the city's experience was on the short platter subdivision with the city planning department. Nothing.
It went well.
I bet it did. I had no doubts.
Mr. Wurst, I have one question. So we skipped a open meeting training. Do we need to reschedule that sometime this summer or in the near future?
I think we're in compliance, where we're at now. I think it's a once every 3-year requirement, but it's not a bad idea to do a refresher. The past session was not nearly as impactful as previous sessions in terms of legislative amendments, but open government training is just a good refresh. Talk to administration and see if that's something we should look at in the near future for all the councils and commissions.
Sounds good.
September is usually a good time to do that. People are back from vacations, things like
Joint
that.
meeting.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ms. Werse? So mayor's report, I've been busy with some personal stuff, but I did have time to have a meeting with Spokane Regional Transportation Commission regarding the Argonne project. We are still looking at acquiring the right-of-way from Inland Empire Paper through condemnation proceedings. That is proceeding at pace. If we cannot come to an amenable agreement at some point for possession and use, I do believe we have a trial date set in Superior Court in November.
November, yeah, that's the soonest, on an expedited trial basis that Spokane County Superior Court can get a hearing scheduled.
So we do have that in the docket. Next thing's coming up will be the special meeting for the hearing regarding the manufactured home park. The work at North 40 is proceeding and seems to be working out well. Our new arrangement with City of Spokane Valley for inspections and working through their inspection system appears to be working very well. Do appreciate the council making that change. It seems to be a lot easier for us to track work that's going on. We don't seem to be surprised by people doing things in the city. So it's been.
The way that their system works is that anytime somebody applies for a permit, it directly emails me. So whether it's a major project like North 40 or just a re-roof or a mechanical permit, I just get a little email that tells me. I don't know if I mentioned at the last meeting, but I have since the last meeting got building permit application for the Banner Bank building. Is going to be a Chipotle restaurant. And then I've had some inquiries about the gas station at Safeway that's been vacant, so. And Taco Time is changing hands apparently. So,
Still a taco time?
as far as I know.
And so, otherwise, we're just looking forward to summer. We are glad that we've been able to find some lifeguards this year. We may change some of the pool hours. I think we're looking at potentially not having the pool open on Sundays and Mondays, correct?
No, I think since we have 2 people, we're gonna try and go 7 days a week.
That will be, we will endeavor to do our best to keep things open. Things change, but this year is far better than last year for staffing. Folks are busy and we've got a lot of stuff to do over the summer for just general maintenance and getting ready for next year. I will say one of the things that the council should be thinking about as we move into fall and winter is that we as a city are gonna need to start having a serious discussion on disposal of our leaves as part of our leaf pickup. And so staff will begin looking at some of the options, but our windows are closing on where we can dispose of our leaf waste, particularly in light of what happened last year when we start to get things where we have great vast piles of snowy frozen leaves that have turned into mush if they last. So we need to consider some other options. Any questions for me? Thank you very much. So, council information, we did not have anything in the packet. We will forward on the sheriff's reports, etc. when we get them. So now comes our times for public remarks. These are an opportunity for citizens to address the council, either in person or by submitting their remarks to our email. We ask that in-person speakers limit themselves to 2 minutes and follow the citizen participation guidelines for the city of Millwood. We did receive one written remark from Mr. Mott regarding our city logo. I would direct you to that. And so at this time, I will go down the public remarks sign-in sheet. Mr. Beasy, do you have any public remarks? Yes. Please, approach the podium. State your name for the record, please, sir.
Todd Beasy, 8610 East South Riverway. Speaking as a spokesperson for myself, since I just saw Greg's letter on the Grace Avenue, I support that. The second item is I'm speaking as a spokesperson for myself and other Millwood residents that we support Teresa and Winston Wiggins' letter on the city logo and the comments from Councilman Stravens tonight. I'm speaking on behalf as a spokesperson for myself and other Millwood residents concerning the mural project. Some other suggestions for where to put the mural are the Gerber Building, Millwood Maintenance Building, Millwood Trail Fence. If you use the Millwood Trail Fence, you can use more than one mural. And we heard from Christina tonight on some of those ideas. And some of those ideas would get support from me and other Millwood residents. Fourth item, speak as a spokesperson for myself and other Millwood residents. Oh, actually well, there we go. I've been hearing people having concerns about homeless people wandering around in the residential areas and living under the bridge. I don't know if they're still living under the bridge, but this is what I heard. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Alan Heidemay.
I did not comment.
Thank you very much. Then we have Shireen Young. Ms. Young, do you have any more comments?
Hi, Shireen Young at 8903 East Liberty, and actually this is about Millwood Farmers Market, and so yes, it was. We had a great first day, and actually this tomorrow will be our third Millwood's Farmers Market, so come on out. We are planning some real special dates, including in July, we're gonna have our Everything Millwood, where we do wanna focus on Millwood businesses or people or entities, anything like that, so people can come to the market and learn more about Millwood. So those are things that are coming up. And I did have a question. Would the city be interested when you're here of having those murals for public to just look at and say, I like, like a dot survey or something? Just a question. Anyway, think about that. But yeah, love the idea, and maybe if we can do them all around, that would be awesome. So, and then our pumpkin patch. As mentioned, we're operating with that. The Millwood Impact has a group that goes out every Wednesday. It's called their Garden Club, and it's really taking off very well. So we're going to have a meeting about our pumpkin patch just to kind of discuss a vision for it as we move forward. Doug and Teresa Sadler have been ongoing, really the warriors keeping it going. So anyway, that was it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And so that concludes the folks that have signed up. So are there any other individuals in the audience that would like to make public remarks to the council? Second call, third and final call. Seeing none, we will close our public remarks period. Council remarks, Mr. Stravens.
I like the idea of presenting the murals to the public. I think that'd be interesting to get kind of a feedback from the public. So I think that's a very good suggestion. That's the only comment I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sander.
Three items. First of all, for budget-wise, I'd hopefully be able to come up with our initial plan of how to implement our forest management. So we need to have something
Yes.
there. I'm not sure what, but we
Yeah.
need to get started.
I know they're working on that,
And
yeah.
along with that would be some sidewalk work. And if we're gonna remove a tree, then there's an opportunity for Kevin to spend his 50,000 by replacing a piece of sidewalk at the same time, you know? The second one is on the pool. If we do have to close, I'd suggest not doing it on Wednesday because farmer's market's a great time to have the family there. And so if they have to close a day, a Tuesday would be a better day for me, I would think, but I think Wednesday would be a nice addition to have. And then lastly, Saturday, the Friends of Oregon are having a book sale at the Lutheran Church. So, come all and.
Where is it
Good
located
books.
at?
Pardon?
Where?
At the Lutheran Church. Yeah. Get some summer reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tanner. Mr. Van Hees.
Have we heard from Sheriff Knowles or the undersheriff about if they're ever coming to our meeting?
I reached out to Undersheriff Kittlestead and have not heard back from him. I will reach out to him again and see what's going on, but usually they will want to make a presentation in September. That's typically the time when they set the new budgets and look at settle and adjust costs. I'm sure that there will be some interest in coming out because of the new jail, or the proposal for the new jail. So there will be some interest for those folks coming out then.
That's the only question I had.
Great, thank you. Mr. Culler?
I'll just echo Kelly's comments about getting public feedback on the murals. It's a good idea.
Thank you very much. So announcements, one last time for the mill and the movie in the park.
Next Friday, the 23rd.
Next Friday, the 23rd. So, for our next meeting, we have a special meeting set for Tuesday, June the 27th at 6 p.m. solely for the purpose of the hearing, the public hearing regarding the appeal of the manufactured home park. And then our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, July the 11th at 6 p.m., reminding council that we need a quorum +1 for that meeting for budget amendment purposes.
On that note, Mayor, we've already received notification that Councilmember BC will not be here that night, so.
Why are you guys staring at me?
Because you need suction cups.
That's true.
You don't take a bad picture.
Yeah.
If you had a bunch of them here, then I can leave. I take
just-
some, I leave.
Be stuck here. So it looks like we're gonna need all 4 of you, so be here. With that, if there is no further business before council, I would ask a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.